The stars had been quiet for 3,000 years. Across the galaxy, 12 powerful alien races ruled everything they could see. They called themselves the Apex Consortium, and they believed they were perfect. Their ships moved through space, like giant crystals, each one the size of a small moon. Inside these vessels, the Apex lived lives without pain, without death, without change. They had machines that could build new suns, and technology that let them move their minds from one body to another. When the old one wore out, Commander Vexera stood on the bridge of the flagship called Eternal Dominion. She was tall and thin, with forearms and skin that looked like polished metal. Around her, other Apex members worked at control panels that glowed with soft blue light. Everything was clean. Everything was perfect. Everything was the same as it had been for centuries. Another signal detected, announced the ship's computer in a voice that never changed tone. System name Sol. Third planet shows primitive radio. Waves. Vexera barely looked up from her reports. This happened all the time. The galaxy was full of young species just learning to use electricity. Most of them were still hitting rocks together or fighting with metal swords. The Apex had a simple rule for these primitive worlds: join us and become perfect or be destroyed. The usual survey team, she said, waving one of her 4 hands. If they have potential, we will improve them. If not, she did not need to finish. Everyone knew what happened to species that could not be improved, but far away in the Sol system. On a blue and green world called Earth, something was happening that would change everything. Admiral Park Jimin sat in a chair made of metal and glass, staring at screens that showed dots moving through space. The dots were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. They had appeared beyond the planet Neptune 3 days ago, and they were moving toward Earth. "Sir," called Lieutenant Kim Nara from across the room. "The objects are definitely ships, and they are not from any country on Earth." Jimin felt his heart beat faster. He had spent his whole life in the military, fighting wars between different human nations. But this was different. This was not about one group of humans fighting another group of humans. This was about something from the stars. The room around him was full of other officers, all wearing blue uniforms with gold buttons. They looked scared, but they were trying not to show it. Humans had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was not the peaceful meeting they had hoped for. How long until they reach Earth? Yemen asked at their current speed. "About 2 weeks," replied Captain Song Hannah, a woman with short black hair and sharp eyes. She commanded Earth's most advanced spaceship, a vessel called Aegis that could travel faster than light. It was humanity's pride. It's built with technology that had taken them 50 years to develop, but compared to the alien ships approaching Earth, the Aegis looked like a toy. On the other side of the galaxy, the Apex survey fleet prepared for another routine mission. Admiral Zethkar studied the reports about the Sol system. The third planet had oxygen, water, and life. The creatures there had built cities and developed nuclear power. This made them more advanced than most species the Apex encountered, but still, thousands of years behind Apex technology. The standard approach, Zethkar told his crew. We arrive, we observe, we decide. If they can be improved, we take them. If they cannot, we remove them. This had been the pattern for 3,000 years. The Apex had found over 500 different species, and all of them had followed the same path. Some were absorbed into the consortium and made perfect. Others fought back and were destroyed. None had ever surprised them. The Apex ships moved through hyperspace, traveling between stars in the time it took humans to eat breakfast. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. They could reshape matter with their thoughts, create energy from nothing, and bend the laws of physics to their will. But there was something the Apex had lost in their pursuit of perfection: the ability to change. They had solved every problem, answered every question, and removed every challenge from their lives. They were powerful, but they were also stuck. They did the same things the same way because those ways were perfect, and perfect things never needed to change. On Earth, President Lee Min-ho called an emergency meeting. Leaders from every country gathered in a room deep underground, connected by computers and cameras. The news was simple and terrifying. Alien ships were coming, and humanity had no idea what they wanted. "We need to prepare for the worst," Minho said, looking at the faces on the screens around him. "This could be peaceful contact, but we cannot assume that." Dr. Choi Minji, a scientist who studied the possibility of alien life, spoke up. "Based on their technology, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. They are taking time to study us first." "That could be good or bad," replied General Park Jin-ho, the man in charge of Earth's military forces. "Maybe they want to understand us before they make friends. Or maybe they want to understand us before they make us extinct." The alien fleet continued its approach, and Earth prepared for first contact with beings from another world. The Apex fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm made of metal and light. Admiral Zethkar expected to find mud huts and primitive farming villages, maybe some basic tools made of stone or bronze. Instead, his scanners detected something impossible. "This cannot be correct," he said, staring at the holographic display floating in front of him. The third planet was covered with cities that glowed with artificial light. Metal structures reached into the sky like fingers. Most shocking of all, there were machines orbiting the planet, and some of these machines held living creatures. Science Officer Morden checked the readings 3 times before speaking. "Admiral, this species has nuclear weapons. They have satellites. They have built stations in space around their moon. According to our development models, this should have taken them at least 2,000 more years." Zethkar felt something he had not experienced in centuries: confusion. The Apex had studied the growth of civilizations across the galaxy for 3 millennia. Every species followed the same pattern. First came fire, then metal, then electricity, then space travel, each step taking hundreds or thousands of years. But these creatures had somehow skipped ahead. On Earth, every telescope and radio dish pointed toward the alien fleet. President Lee Min-ho stood in the command center deep beneath the capital city, watching as reports came in from around the world. The alien ships were massive, each one larger than the biggest human city. They held position beyond Mars, neither advancing nor retreating. "They are scanning us," reported Captain Song Hana from the bridge of the Aegis, humanity's fastest ship. "Every satellite, every radio tower, every piece of technology we have. It is like they are making a list of everything we own." Dr. Choi Minji worked at a computer terminal, trying to understand the energy patterns coming from the alien vessels. "Their technology is incredible," she said. "They are using forms of energy we have only theorized about. But there is something strange about their communication signals." "What do you mean?" asked Admiral Park Jimin, who had been placed in charge of Earth's defense. "Their messages have not changed for hours," Mingi replied. "They have the same patterns, the same frequencies, repeated exactly. It is like they are using a script that was written long ago and never updated." The first real communication came at dawn on the 4th day. Every computer, every television, every electronic device on Earth suddenly displayed the same message. It was not words or pictures, but pure mathematical concepts that somehow appeared directly in human minds. The message was simple and terrifying. "You will submit to Apex authority. Resistance will cause unnecessary suffering. You have 7 planetary rotations to prepare for integration." President Min-ho called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Leaders from every nation appeared on screens, their faces showing the same mixture of fear and determination. 7 days, he said. "They are giving us 7 days to surrender." "We need to know what we are facing," said General Park Jin-ho. "Send out scouts. Find out how many ships they have and what weapons they carry." Captain Song Hana volunteered to take the Aegis on a reconnaissance mission. Her ship was fast and small, built for exploration rather than war. As she approached the alien fleet, her instruments detected technology that should not have been possible. The alien ships used energy sources that could power entire human cities, and their weapons could probably destroy Earth's moon with a single shot. But there was something else her scanners detected, something that gave her hope. "Admiral," she reported back to Earth. "Their ships are identical. Not just similar, but exactly the same. Same size, same design, same energy signature. It is like they built one perfect ship and then made thousands of copies." On the Apex flagship, Admiral Zethkar studied the scan results of human civilization. What he saw made no sense according to everything the Apex knew about technological development. These creatures had somehow created artificial intelligence. In less than a century, it split the atom, built quantum computers, and developed faster-than-light travel in the time it took most species to discover agriculture. How is this possible? He asked Science Officer Morden. Their development is chaotic, Morden replied. Most species progress in an orderly fashion, each technology building on the previous one. But these creatures seem to make random jumps forward. They discover things by accident, by trial and error, by combining ideas that should not work together. That is inefficient, Zethkar said. That is wasteful. Yes, but it is also unpredictable. Our models cannot predict what they will do next because they do not seem to know what they will do next. Back on Earth, Dr. Choi Minji made a discovery that would change everything. After studying the alien communications for 3 days, she found something hidden in the mathematical patterns. President, she called urgently, you need to see this. The Global Defense Council gathered once again as Mingi presented her findings. They are not just advanced, she said. They're old. It's very old. Their language patterns, their technology signatures, their communication methods, none of them have changed in thousands of years. They have achieved perfection, but they have stopped growing. President Minho leaned forward. What does that mean for us? It means they expect us to follow their rules, Minji replied. But we have never been good at following rules. The 7 days were nearly over, and humanity faced a choice: surrender. 2 beings who had stopped evolving, or fight for the right to keep changing, keep growing, keep making mistakes and learning from them. Earth chose to fight. The 7th day arrived with fire falling from the sky. Admiral Zethkar had given the humans their warning, and now it was time to enforce Apex law. His fleet moved into Earth's solar system like a tide of metal and energy. The plan was simple: test it on 1,000 worlds, destroy their military, capture their leaders, and begin the process of making them perfect. Begin standard pacification protocol, he ordered from the bridge of his flagship. Round him, Apex. Officers worked at their stations with the calm efficiency of machines. They had done this many times before. The first wave of Apex missiles launched toward Earth, each one carrying enough power to level a human city. These weapons had never failed to break the will of a species. But as they streaked through space toward their targets, something unexpected happened. Captain Song Hannah sat in the command chair of the Aegis, watching her instruments as the alien attack began. Her ship should have been no match for Apex technology, but human engineers had been working day and night for 7 days, taking apart every piece of alien equipment they could scan and rebuilding it with human improvements. Incoming missiles, reported Lieutenant Kim Nara. 47 weapons, each one capable of destroying a major city. Fire everything we have, Hannah ordered, and may luck be with us. The Aegis launched its own missiles, but these were not the same weapons it had carried a week ago. Human scientists had somehow combined Apex, energy technology with human targeting systems, and Earth's most powerful explosives. The result was something that should not have worked, but somehow did. Zethkar watched in shock as his perfect weapons met the human counterattack. Instead of the expected easy victory, explosions filled the space between Earth and Mars. Half of his missiles were destroyed before they could reach their targets. How was this possible? He demanded. They have had only 7 days to study our technology. Science Officer Morden stared at his instruments in confusion. Admiral, they are not copying our designs. They're improving them. Their weapons use our energy systems, but with modifications that our computers say should not work. On Earth's surface, Colonel Park Jin-ho coordinated the planet's defense from a command center buried deep underground. Around him, officers from every human military force worked together, sharing information and resources in a way that had never happened before in human history. The orbital defense platforms are taking heavy damage, reported Major Kim So-man, but they are holding longer than expected. What about the Sol Protocol? Jin-ho asked. Ready to activate on your command, So-man replied. The Sol Protocol was humanity's desperate gamble. Every particle accelerator, every fusion reactor, every quantum computer on Earth would be linked together in a network that had never been tested. The plan was to create a planetary defense system that could adapt and learn in real time. Do it, Ginho ordered. Across the globe, machines that had been built for scientific research suddenly became weapons of war. They were a thinking, learning system that could change its tactics faster than any enemy could respond. The Apex fleet pressed forward, expecting to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer power. But as their ships entered Earth's atmosphere, they encountered something no Apex computer had ever seen, a defense system that got stronger as it fought. Admiral Zethkar watched his carefully planned attack fall apart. Human weapons that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Human ships that should have been helpless somehow damaged Apex vessels that were thousands of years more advanced. Their learning curve is impossible, Morden reported as another Apex ship took critical damage. They are adapting faster than our computers can calculate. Every time we destroy one of their weapons, 3 more appear with improvements. Captain. Song Hannah pushed the Aegis through a cloud of debris, her ship's hull scarred but intact. Around her, the battle raged in a way that violated every rule of warfare she had been taught. Human forces were not following any battle plan because they were making up new tactics every few minutes. Captain called Lieutenant Kimnara. The enemy flagship is trying to retreat. Hannah could not believe what she was hearing. The alien ship that had seemed so powerful was actually running away, not because it was damaged, but because its crew could not understand what was happening. On the Apex flagship, Zethkar faced a situation that had never occurred in 3,000 years of Apex history. His perfect weapons were being defeated by imperfect ones. His superior technology was being beaten by creatures who seemed to make up solutions as they went along. Admiral reported his communications officer, "We are receiving surrender demands from the human fleet." "Surrender demands?" Zethkar repeated. "They want us to surrender?" "Yes, sir. They are offering to accept our surrender and promising to treat us fairly according to something they call the Geneva Convention." For the first time in his long life, Admiral Zethkar experienced fear. Not fear of death. The Apex had conquered death long ago, but fear of something worse. The fear of being wrong. "Retreat," he ordered quietly, "sir." "Shh," his officers asked, not sure they had heard correctly. "Retreat," Zethkar shouted. "Or retreat." Now, as the Apex fleet fled Earth's solar system, leaving behind damaged ships and confused crews, something unprecedented happened. News of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy faster than the Apex could control it. For the first time in 3 millennia, a species had not only survived first contact with the Apex, they had one. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Carried by the same communication networks the Apex used to control their empire. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 different languages, the impossible message spread. The humans had won, on the mining world of Vorthka Prime. A worker named Kexmora dropped his tools when the transmission reached his neural implant. For 800 years, his people had labored in the deep mines. Their warrior traditions forgotten, their weapons melted down to build Apex machines. But now, as he stared at the holographic display showing human ships chasing Apex vessels through space, something awakened in his chest. They fought back. He whispered to his work partner. They actually fought back and won. Within hours, Kexmora was not alone. Across the mining colonies, Warthog workers began to remember songs their grandparents had sung in secret. Stories of the time before the Apex came and made them civilized. Some still had weapons hidden in deep caves, wrapped in cloth and waiting for a day that would never come, except now. It would. In the crystal cities of the Silkmar Collective, something even more extraordinary happened. The Silkmar had been changed by the Apex more than any other species. Their individual minds had been linked together into a peaceful hive consciousness that made war impossible. They shared every thought, every emotion, every decision, but when the news of Earth's victory reached them, Silkmar named Dalthea experienced something she had never felt before, a thought that was hers alone. For just a moment, she wondered what it would be like to make a choice without consulting the collective mind. That single thought spread through the hive like a virus. Soon, thousands of Silkmar were having individual thoughts, personal desires, private dreams. The perfect unity the Apex had created began to crack. On the Apex homeworld, Counselor Vexthera convened an emergency session of the ruling council. The 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered in a chamber that had seen no real debate for centuries. Everything had been decided long ago, perfected, made permanent. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Nexavaler, his forearms, gesturing at the holographic displays, showing rebellion spreading across their territories. "One primitive world has destabilized systems that have been peaceful for millennia. It is not their technology," reported Admiral Zethkar, his confidence shattered by his retreat from Earth. "It is something else, something we do not understand." Apex had built their empire on predictability. Every species followed the same pattern: resistance, defeat, integration, perfection. They had mathematical models that could predict exactly how long each phase would take. But humans had broken the pattern. On Earth, President Lee Jisoo stood before the Global Defense Council, reading reports from across the galaxy. Lee Minho had died in the first Apex attack, and now she carried the weight of not just Earth's future, but the hope of countless worlds. "The Apex communication networks are in chaos," reported Dr. Choi Minji, who had been promoted to Director of Alien Relations. "We are receiving messages from dozens of species we have never heard of. They all want the same thing: to know how we did it." "What do we tell them?" asked Admiral Park Jimin, still amazed that his small fleet had driven off the most powerful. "Force in the galaxy. We tell them the truth," Jisoo replied. "We tell them that the secret is not in our weapons or our technology. Secret is in never accepting that something cannot be changed." Captain Song Hana, now commander of Earth's expanding fleet, prepared to broadcast a message across the galaxy. Her ship, the Aegis, had been rebuilt again with technology that combined human creativity with captured Apex systems. It was not perfect, but it was constantly improving. "People of the galaxy," she began, her words carried by hijacked Apex communication networks to every world under their control. "We are not stronger than the Apex. We are not smarter than them. Bid we have something they gave up long ago: the ability to grow, to change, to become something new." On distant worlds, beings who had forgotten their own names began to remember. The Zephyrians recalled their ancient poetry. The Mordok remembered their traditional dances. The Krillinox began to paint again, using colors the Apex had declared. Imperfect, the rebellion was not organized. There was no central command, no grand strategy. But that was exactly what made it so dangerous to the Apex. They could not predict chaos. They could not model random change. They could not fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules in the crystal cities of the Apex homeworld. Something unprecedented happened. The first argument in 300 years. Counselor Vexthera believed they should negotiate with. The rebels, Counselor Nexavaler, wanted to crush them with overwhelming force. Others suggested retreat to the core worlds and abandonment. Of the outer territories, they could not agree because they had forgotten how to disagree. Perfection had made them weak. On Earth, Dr. Choi Minji studied the data streaming in from across the galaxy. Species that had been silent for centuries were suddenly broadcasting music, art, literature, and mathematics. The galaxy was waking up from a very long sleep. The Apex made a mistake, she told President Jisoo. They thought that eliminating conflict would create peace. But conflict is not the enemy of progress. Stagnation is. As reports continued to arrive from rebel worlds, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never be the same. The Apex had been a force of nature. But Earth had become something more powerful, a catalyst for change. The revolution had begun. And it was spreading faster than anyone could control. The final battle began not with a single explosion, but with 1,000 small rebellions across the galaxy. From the mining worlds of Vorthka to the crystal cities of Silkmar, species that had been silent for centuries suddenly found their voices again. Admiral Park Jimin stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, now called the New Horizon, watching. Holographic displays that showed the collapse of the Apex Empire. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become something much larger, a galactic revolution. Rebel fleets are engaging Apex forces in the Kepler system. reported Lieutenant Kimnara, her voice filled with excitement. The Vorthok warriors are using weapons we designed for them, combined with their own traditional fighting techniques. And the Silkmar? Asked Captain Songhana, who now commanded the entire Earth Defense Fleet. They are doing something we never expected, Nara replied. They are thinking for themselves. Individual Silkmar are making their own tactical decisions instead of following the collective mind. The Apex cannot predict their movements. On the Apex homeworld, Counselor Vexera watched her perfect empire crumble through screens that showed chaos spreading across 13 star systems. The mathematical models that had governed Apex society for 3 millennia were useless. How could you predict the behavior of beings who had forgotten how to be predictable? We must negotiate, she told the emergency council session. The old ways are not working. Negotiate. Counselor Nexavalor's voice carried disbelief. We are the Apex. We do not negotiate with primitives. These are not primitives, Vexeta replied quietly. They are something we have forgotten how to be. Adaptable. In space near Earth's moon, the final confrontation was about to begin. The Apex had sent their most powerful fleet, led by the massive ship Eternal Dominion. But approaching from the outer planets came a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans fighting alongside former Apex subjects. Their ships carrying weapons that blended a dozen different technologies. Captain Songhana piloted the rebuilt Aegis toward the enemy flagship. Her ship looked nothing like it had when the war began. Human engineers had been constantly improving it, adding new systems, removing old ones, changing everything that could be changed. It was not perfect, but it was alive in a way that Apex technology could never be. All rebel fleets, this is Captain Song. She broadcast across all frequencies. Remember, we are not trying to destroy them. We are trying to teach them. The battle that followed broke every rule of warfare that had existed for 3,000 years. Human tactics changed every few minutes. Vorthok warriors used strategies their ancestors had developed, then modified them based on human suggestions. Silkmar pilots made individual choices that surprised even their own allies. Admiral Zethkar, commanding the Eternal Dominion, found himself fighting an enemy that should not have existed. How could you defeat an opponent who changed the rules of engagement in the middle of battle? Their formations make no sense, reported his tactical officer. They are using 17 different fighting styles simultaneously. Our computers cannot find a pattern. Because there is no pattern, Zethkar realized, they are not following a plan. They are creating one as they fight. On Earth, President Lee Jisu watched the battle through quantum communication links. She knew that this fight would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of the entire galaxy. Win or lose, things would never be the same. Dr. Choi Minji, while serving as Earth's chief strategic advisor, analyzed the data streaming. In from the battle, the Apex are starting to change, she reported. Some of their ships are using modified tactics, trying to copy what our allies are doing. Is that good or bad? Jisoo asked. It is exactly what we hoped for, Mingi replied. They are learning to adapt again. The turning point came when Counselor Vexera made a decision that shocked everyone, including herself. She opened a communication channel to the human fleet and spoke words that had not been heard in the galaxy for millennia. We surrender, she said simply. The fighting stopped so suddenly that the silence seemed louder than the explosions had been. Across 13 star systems, Apex and Rebel forces ceased fire and stared at each other across the void. Captain Song. Hannah was the first to respond. We accept your surrender, she said, and we welcome you to the future. What followed was not conquest, but transformation. The Apex Empire did not fall, it evolved. Some worlds chose independence, rediscovering the cultures they had lost. Others formed new alliances with Earth and its allies. A few Apex colonies even requested human teachers to help them learn how to change again. President Lee. Jisoo addressed the newly formed Galactic Council from Earth's capital. Representatives from dozens of species, former enemies, and new friends listened as she spoke. The Apex were indeed a force of nature, she said. But Earth became something more important. A reminder that the universe belongs to those who never stop growing. 6 months later, Dr. Choi Mingi published her final report on the war. Her conclusion was simple. We did not win because we were stronger or smarter. We won because we proved that evolution never ends. The moment you stop changing, you start dying. The galaxy was no longer perfect, but it was alive. And for the first time in 3,000 years, that was exactly as it should be.